welcome back to the Career Corner podcast where we answer your cozy career cues. I'm your season 5 host, Malcolm Alexander, and on today's episode, we are so excited to be joined by Sam Abramson. Sam, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Would you like to start off by telling our listeners a little bit about yourself? I know that you are what some might call a double alumnus, maybe, of IC. Would you like to explain a little bit about your past?
Yeah, so I graduated this past May with my MBA from Ithaca through the business school. And prior to that, I graduated from the music school in 2024 with a vocal music degree. My full name was BMO, so it stood for Bachelor in Music in combination with an outside field. So it was like somewhere in between a major and a minor. It was like they call it a concentration, and my concentration was entertainment management or something like that. I can't remember exactly what I ended up calling it, but and then my natural progression when I found out that the business school had a 1 year MBA, I went straight into that. And yeah, here I am.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting career path, sort of to start in an artistic field, and then transition really more into, I guess, sort of a specifically business side of that art. Could you tell me a little bit more about sort of what during your time as an undergrad sort of inspired you to say, oh, maybe I'd like to pursue an MBA?
Yeah, so I mean, just to back up, I've been into music like my whole entire life. I started singing when I was in like preschool, and then I did choirs all throughout elementary, middle, and high school. And when I graduated high school, I wanted, or I thought I wanted to do music education, which brought me to Ithaca because Ithaca has like a world-renowned music education program. I did about a year and a half in that program, that whole time basically being online because I started in the pandemic in 2020. And I enjoyed it, but then when I got to like the in-person field experience, actually like getting my hands dirty with teaching, I realized that it wasn't for me. And then from there, I went into the BMO program just to kind of discover what I knew I wanted to do some kind of music, but what avenue I wanted to go down. And I started off at psychology because I've always had a passion for psychology. So I thought I wanted to do music therapy for a while. That wasn't clicking for me, so I decided to do entertainment business because like pop music and pop culture has always been an interest of mine as well. And then my summer after junior year, I did the ICLA program through the Park School, which common misconception, it's supposed to only be for Park students, but Ithaca is very open to like career paths and finding what you want to do. So I just had to sign some quick papers, talk to my advisors and whatnot. And so I went to LA for the summer and had two internships in the industry. One of them was at a music PR or just a entertainment PR company called Biz3. And then the other was at a recording studio in LA called King Size Sound Labs. So but those two internships really showed me that like this is where I wanted to be. And then from there, I was looking into where I should go next, if I should try to just get straight into the industry or if I should pursue a higher education to like open my options a little bit more for like entry level jobs. And so that's when I discovered that Ithaca had this 1 year MBA program, and I jumped on the opportunity and I did the program, and here I am. Yeah.
Awesome. I really love that you took a really like exploratory approach throughout college, to really sort of figure out like where exactly within your passions you sort of wanted to take your future career. One of the things that we talk about a lot on this show, is sort of the nonlinear career path, and that college can be a time where a lot changes about yourself and what you thought you maybe wanted to do. Do you have any advice for any students out there who are maybe feeling the way that you might have felt, that like maybe what they're going into right now maybe isn't exactly what they'd like to do, and maybe they'd like to pivot some way? Do you have any sort of tips or tricks, for how to navigate what could be maybe sort of a scary or daunting period?
Yeah. I mean, um, I've always thought it was a little crazy that you're supposed to pick what you want to do for the rest of your life at 17 years old, like applying to colleges. And so like I always knew in the back of my mind that like maybe the major I chose to go into wasn't going to be the one that I graduated with. I always kind of had an open mind of like things could change, my passions can change, and honestly they still are. Like I love like what I'm trying to get into in this industry, but like I have other passions as well. And at first, it gave me a lot of anxiety of like, am I going to graduate on time if I switch majors, or like am I don't know what I want to do yet, but I heard like a statistic one time that was like the average college student changes their major something like 3 to 5 times before they graduate. And that's pretty comforting because like everyone does it. Like again, you're 17 years old. How are you really supposed to know what you're like going to do for the rest of your life? And even at that point, like if you graduate college, that still doesn't have to be the exact path that you end up going down. I mean, like for example, my dad was a zoology major in college, and then now he's a dentist. So like there are paths and everything is applicable. Like every skill that you learn in one major can be twisted in a way or like turned in a way that you can show that it's applicable to any field. And so I think like as long as you have a degree and it's something that you enjoyed learning about, there's no like harm in switching it around a couple times to find your passion.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a great point. When it comes to sort of those like skills being applicable across the board, are there any skills that you feel like you picked up either in undergrad or during your MBA program that you feel like are really, really impactful and are going to be really helpful for your future career?
Yeah. So when I graduated with my music degree and I decided I was going to go to the business side of things, I was a little nervous because I was like, I don't really have any of the skills. I mean, I took a bunch of business classes in my undergrad, but in terms of like the like accounting and like all of the hardcore business classes, I was a little bit nervous. But what I found is that like music is such a team sport, sort of say. You have to work together in order to create something. And so I found that when I went into my master's, that background was super helpful of like being able to cooperate within a group and like balancing dynamics around like within a group is very important. And you learn that like day one of an MBA program is like organizational structure and leadership type deal. And so then that when I entered my master's, a lot of organization on my part was like a rude awakening to me. Like I was like, oh, I need to be more organized because I mean, I started off as a creative, and creatives are notoriously like type B, like, and so I had to learn how to shift a little bit towards type A. And a lot of the positions that I'm applying to right now, it's interesting, even though I'm in a creative field, a lot of the positions I'm applying to right now are more focused on analytical and like data driven stuff because that's where every industry is kind of moving towards right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of sort of looking into new jobs, could you tell me a little bit about sort of what you've been up to since graduating? I know you've been doing some freelance opportunities. So just sort of what have you been up to, I guess, after leaving IC?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll be transparent. The industry and the job market right now is a little bit sketchy. It's a little hard to get a job at the moment. And so since graduating, I haven't really done a whole lot because it's been super competitive. So, but I did pick up a freelance production assistance job at a YouTube event in Manhattan. And so that was super cool. It was about a 2 week gig, and I was doing everything from preparing budget sheets for the team to moving furniture and setting up things and whatnot. So that was definitely an interesting experience. And then I've also just been doing a lot of networking, talking to people, and staying up to date on like current events. It's funny, because I'm in the music or because I want to be in the music industry, I guess. Part of my like research is listening to new music and like really understanding what's coming out on a day-to-day basis. So I've always done that. So I find it very enjoyable. But like that's what I've been mostly getting up to is like staying up to date post grad and like still opening myself up to like learning post grad. But yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think almost everyone is aware right now that the job market is just really tough. And I think that that's sort of one of the points that we like to address on this show is that sometimes the job market is really tough, but there are still things that you can be doing. There are still sort of pathways that you can be exploring. It's never over, I guess, is sort of the bottom line. Would you like to talk about a little bit of, I guess, like some tips or tricks that you found so far through freelancing or just sort of building your connection net, ways to sort of get your face and name out there a little bit more?
Yeah, I have a love-hate relationship with networking. It is very, very important, obviously, and I don't think in this day and age, at least for now, it is possible to get a job without networking. And I think networking used to be a supplement to a job application, as a way to like increase your chances of getting said job. But I think now networking is a necessity to get a job. You can't really do it without it. And generally, people want to help people, but there's a fine balance between not making a relationship feel transactional versus not wasting someone's time with like dancing around what you really need or want. And so I found in the beginning of my like networking journey, I started like wasting a lot of time. I wouldn't call it wasting. Let me rephrase. I spent a lot of time building relationships and like being like, how are you? How are your kids? Like, what have you been up to? All that stuff, which I think is important in its own respect. But it got to a point where I started networking with people and being like, hey, I'm super interested in your company and I would love to hear what you do. And maybe if there's any opportunities to join your team. And I think I found that there's a much better reaction to being upfront and honest about what you want, because people are busy and people don't have time to foster a relationship when like in the back of their minds they know like what you're really here for and like what you really need from this relationship. But I think you have to have both because people like know that when things are transactional. And I think it's important to have networks not only to get jobs but like in the future when you have a job and your boss is like, hey, do you happen to know anyone who's good at XYZ, you can turn to your network and be like, hey, do you happen to know someone or are you good at blah, 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 blah? So I think networking is not only good for getting jobs, but also like just to have resources and people to talk to and bounce ideas off of and whatnot.
I think that's a really good point about you sort of have to toe the line between, engaging with people and building a real relationship, but also knowing that everyone is busy. People are sort of tending to their own lives. So you can't just be, clearly just trying to use them, I guess, use them in quotes for some sort of connection. Are there any resources that you experience? I know you mentioned the ICLA program. Are there any others that you had during your time at IC that you feel like have been helpful at all?
I love LinkedIn. I actually think I spend a little too much time on LinkedIn sometimes. Like I find myself like going to bed and I'm scrolling through LinkedIn, which is I don't think that's very healthy, but I tend to like my favorite thing to do is like I'll go to a company that I want to work for and then I'll like sort by school and then like all the Ithaca alums that work for said company will show up and then you can even sort by like city. And like I'm located by New York City, so that's where I'm trying to get a job right now. So I could do like people at like X company who went to Ithaca College and who live in New York City. And then I'll reach out to them and be like, hey, I went to Ithaca, like super, and then, the whole script. But I think that is like where I found the most success. And also finding their email address is easier than you think. I think there's, again, balance and like respecting people's boundaries and like understanding that like it's a little weird to hit someone up out of the blue if you like don't have a connection in the first place. But like I would say if you've sent a LinkedIn connection request and you've ethically found their email online, it's appropriate to reach out and just again show curiosity is the like my biggest advice because people generally want to talk about themselves. And so I think when you come at it with an angle of curiosity, there's more success that way.
Absolutely. And I think that sort of building up your LinkedIn connections and everything, we hear all the time that Ithaca grads are always willing to connect with Ithaca grads and always willing to, at least get coffee with you, chat with you, some advice, something like that. It really is a
Yeah.
network.
And I found that like literally everywhere you go, there's Ithaca alum. Like it's a very Ithaca's a small school, but like the alumni network is super interesting because I literally like everywhere, every company in especially the entertainment industry, there's usually one to two people that went to Ithaca College that work at the company.
That's wow. Yeah. I mean, that sounds about right from what we usually hear,
Yeah.
but it really is a super wide-ranging field. And you mentioned sort of staying in touch with the current music industry and sort of staying in touch with current times. What are some of the methods, the medias that you consume to do that, to sort of keep in touch?
Yeah, so I am naturally just a curious mind. Like I love watching Jeopardy and just like love like falling down rabbit holes on Google and whatever. And so like researching my industry and like staying up to date kind of just falls in line with that. But I also like try to keep it light, like I'm not reading like intro to marketing textbooks, like for fun. But there's like the number one, the Bible, they call it in the industry book. It's called Everything You Need to Know About the Music Business or Industry or something like that by Donald Passman. That book is, they call it like the industry Bible because it has everything you need to know about the industry. So reading that book from time to time when I'm a little bit fuzzy on what like a concept is or whatever. Podcasts a lot are, I love podcasts, and there's a couple of really good music business podcasts and pop music podcasts. My favorite is Hooked on Pop, which is what I talked about on, or sorry, Switched on Pop, which is what I talked about on my LinkedIn post. They go into like different artists, songs, like pop culture moments in pop music, and they'll talk about it and break it down on like a music theory level, but like very rudimentary music theory level for people who like didn't study it. And then they talk about like the music history sometimes and pop music history. And it's taught by two professors. One of them is a professor at NYU, and one of them is a professor at USC. And so like that is feels like one of my music history classes that I took in my undergrad. So I really like that. And again, I also just listen to a ton of new music every day. Like this morning, I even woke up and listened to a new album. I even if I don't really like the artist, I think it's important to listen to the album cover to cover just so that like you understand what's happening. And if somebody wanted to talk about the album, you could like understand the context and like how it's fitting into culture right now. So keeping it enjoyable is definitely my number one recommendation.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think we live in a time now where there's so much media and content out there that it's almost easier to stay informed or stay in touch without it feeling sort of boring and sloggy than it's ever been. So
Yeah.
I think using those resources is really, really helpful for students or anyone who maybe just wants to more keep in touch with the industry that they like to go into, because that is, always important to know what's going on.
Yeah. And it also can feel like overwhelming too. I get very overwhelmed with how much new music there is. But I think like it, at least if you're trying, it shows. And like jobs in general want to see passion. They want to see that like you really want to be here. And I think when you talk about your favorite music or your favorite artist, it shows becoming well versed if you want to be in this industry is important. I also am subscribed to like newsletters that come to my email, and the headline, like even if you just read the headline, you can like deduct what's happening or deduce what's happening. And so like stuff like that, like you don't need to overwhelm yourself too. Like take it in doses.
Absolutely, yeah. Especially post grad. I mean, there's so many changes going on at once in life. No need to overwhelm yourself and make things any harder than they really need to be. Do you have
Mhm.
any sort of closing advice, any sort of final thoughts for any of our listeners that might be interested in going into an MBA program or going into the music industry, or are maybe just feeling a little bit maybe lost at their current space?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely in the same boat. I am newly post grad, and so everything does still feel new to me and nerve-wracking to me. But I think something that I have always valued, and this goes for like your education and jobs and like understanding like everything is balance. So like it's okay to apply to 200 jobs in a day if you really want to, but like at some point put your phone down, close the computer, go take a walk, like touch some grass, like it's okay to have work-life balance. And like I feel like there is a lot of pressure always to constantly be working. Like if you're not working, what are you doing? Or like if you're not being productive, what are you doing? But for me, that causes a lot of burnout. And then the applications that I'm putting out are not quality because I'm burnt out. And so there's been times where I've taken a whole week off from applying to jobs because I'm just like, I need a second. Like I'm getting overwhelmed and burnt out. And I think, especially you mentioned like if people thinking about going into an MBA, MBAs are like a little bit intense, especially if it's a 1 year program like that is at Ithaca College. And so I think like balancing your time between like work and doing stuff for yourself, whatever that may be, is important. And part of that is like don't procrastinate, like try to do things when they're assigned. and like way before the deadline's over so that you can have time for yourself and not be cramming all the time, which is obviously easier said than done. But yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really great. Sort of put your mental health and your well-being first because it will genuinely contribute to you doing better work and better things coming.
right.
Um, yeah, absolutely. I think that's great. Well, thank you so much, Sam, for speaking with us today. I think we got over some really great stuff. I think it was great to hear your insights, and I think it'll be really helpful for students, even if they're sort of in a very similar boat as you, just to know that there are other people out there who are going through similar experiences. So thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you all for listening. Be sure to tune in to our next episode. And thank you all for being here. That's it for today's episode. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow Career Corner on Instagram and Spotify to stay up to date with future releases. If you're interested in posing some more cozy career cues or in checking out the Career Closet, Headshot Booth, and all the other cool resources available, feel free to stop by drop-in hours at the Center for Career Exploration and Development in Miller Faculty Center 101 from 11 to 2, Monday through Friday. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Career Corner Podcast.